It's the Friday before the start of the regular season. Almost time to roll out the basketballs officially. And we have to talk about the rotation.
And thankfully, no more preseason basketball.
And no more preseason basketball. Even though there's a game tonight, we'll talk about it because we cannot see it. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Podcast on a Friday alongside Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck. I'm Devon Givens. Brianna here producing all of you in the chat. And today we are brought to you by, as always, our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics and Bet365. We'll talk about them in a little bit more later on, but we do have to start off our conversation today because we have a lot to get to with this rotation, with this basketball team, having seen some games, getting an idea of what Nick Nurse and the coaching staff will look for, what they will look like, what these players' roles will be. There are burning questions for each one of those, though, as we get ready for the start of this season. And with it, there was a story written by Kyle Newbeck at allphly.com. It's a very, very extensive piece.
No, I decided to do my job for once since
you did your job.
We had
well,
a long off season of doing almost. Well, I won't say almost nothing. We're in here every day. But on the written front, things slow to a crawl once late July hits. So the cobwebs are being taken out of my head, at least some of them anyway. And I'm getting ready, as are we all, to let it rip for this season.
For a good 7 months that we'll be with you, of course, talking about actual basketball games. You hope that it goes a little bit further into June, getting to the NBA Finals. And that's all going to be based on what this team does once they finally do get out there. So, Kyle, with this piece, you're talking about, of course, the top tier of the team. Those three players, the all-stars that they have in Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George, the big acquisition. Then there's the tier of the other guys, the other players from Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, that are definitely going to be in that rotation. And then we get into the other tier of the other players that we think they have a role, of course, to start the season, but we're not quite sure what that role may be for Nick Nurse's squad. So could you lay out what you were getting into as you wrote almost 10 million words in this piece at allphly.com?
10 million. I think short of 10,000, first of all. So not 10 million, but I appreciate the yeah. So first I sat down and went through all my notes, saw all the things that we've heard in training camp and all the things we've seen in preseason, stuff that Nick Nurse has told us at practice, pieces of interviews, thoughts from guys around the team, around the league, whatever it might be. And I think all of us at this point probably know definitely the top 8. And I think at this point, almost certainly the top 10 guys who are going to be in this rotation. And so I wanted to sort of summarize where they're all at, what we've heard, what we've seen, maybe things people do not see just watching preseason games, but certainly some of what we've seen in the preseason. And then laying out for each and every one of those guys, what's one of the biggest things that I'm watching for this year. It doesn't have to be, we're all going to be on different pages in that respect, right? Like what I think is the biggest deal for Joel or Kelly or Guerschon or anybody on the team might not be what you two think, but just something that's, rattling around in my brain as this is the biggest thing or one of the biggest things for this guy this year. And I thought it would be a relatively short exercise, but it turns out when you don't have restraints, I just keep going and going until I feel like it's over. And so it turned into a monstrosity of an article in, I hope, the best way for our diehards. And so I wanted to hopefully, expound on that today and kick some things around with you guys because I went through my whole process, but obviously we differ on not a ton of things, but enough things we'll see where we land on.
Yep. So having looked at the piece and having read the piece and reading all those words that Martian Lynch 33 says Kyle's a Pulitzer Prize winner like Mr. Morale in this one. So
no big steppers around here. Although apparently I have bigger shoes than Kendrick. So,
then again, I thought Martian wasn't a diehard. Not the diehard shame here, but he's been talking in the chat all the time. He's like, next paycheck, I'm signing up. I don't know, Martian.
Eugene has been promising for a little bit too.
Oh, is that Eugene? Did I get that?
Both of them have hinted at it.
How about both?
Not the diehard shame, but you bring it up yourself in the chat.
Well, Martian is in the chat saying, if you like a long read for your flight, sign up to the diehard program. So at the very least, we're getting some free promo from friend of the show, Martian Lynch 33. So thank you, buddy. We appreciate it.
For me, I'll start with the Embiid conversation because, I mean, it's pretty evident. We've talked about it so much from the end of the regular season to the offseason to Team USA and then training camp and then right here again, just days away from the start of the 24-25 season, of his importance and the new outlook that he's having on the season and what that might look like. We've discussed it ourselves of, we believe in Embiid, things that he's saying, but when it actually comes down to it, the nitty gritty, and they're saying you cannot play on this back-to-back, and there's a meaningful spot in the season, in the schedule, and he's saying, no, forget that, I'm playing both here. And that's going to be a true test of that. It's going to be a true test of the amount of minutes that he does play in these games. How much is he also going to rely heavily on all of the preaching of the last 2 seasons? It was really, really elevated last season, and then certainly in that first round matchup against the Knicks, of how much the belief is there, Derek, with Tyrese Maxey and passing the torch, if you will. Not handing it all the way, but passing it sometimes, and that trust and that belief in having him when Embiid is maybe not having a good game, or Tyrese Maxey just simply has it going and he's handing it off again to, young fella, you carry this one here.
Yeah, and like it is such a big deal. Not that he's going to maybe even score fewer points than Tyrese, not that he's always going to be a number 2, but just the fact that he has enough confidence that depending on time, situation, matchup, who's got it going, he's willing to do that more often than he had in the past. I think that is key, not only because Tyrese Maxey has ascended the way he has, but now you have Paul George, who is probably in terms of, he might be the 3rd best pure scorer that Joel has ever played with the 2nd best pure scorer being at this stage of their careers, because I know James Harden was obviously great earlier on. This might be the 2nd and 3rd best pure scorer he's played alongside during the course of his career, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. So having that, growing into that mentality sort of at the right time of his career arc and at the right time of the team construction is huge. Now, we do have to see it play out. Like I've said a lot, what he showed in that Knicks series, I think is really encouraging. It's something I don't think he would have done 3 or 4 years ago, but he has to do it now when it counts as well.
Yeah. So for me, the big question with Joel is his walk going to match the talk, essentially? And that's not to say that I think Joel is lying to us. It's more, as we've touched on throughout the offseason, it's easy to say something in October. It's different when the example I keep using, the game in Denver, for example, is a 3rd game in 4 nights, which is,
of course it is.
Great job by the NBA once again for the scheduling on that one. But, Joel being a competitor, knowing the narrative that's out there about Jokic, on the other side of it is the back-to-backs and, I'm not doing this. We're going to take it easy not take it easy is not the right way of putting it, but we're going to be thoughtful and careful in the regular season about how he's used. And then there's competitive Joel. It's like, no, I want to play in this game. I feel good. There's nothing wrong with me. My knee's good. My body is good. Why can't I play in this game? And, fighting the urge to be, the featured piece of the offense, as he's saying, Tyrese is, I want him to be the number 1 guy. I want to help him become that guy for this team. It's not that I think Joe is lying. It's not that I think he's going into the season with, duplicitous intentions or anything like that. I just think when you are a high-level competitor to the degree that Joel is, a lot easier to say I want to do something different than it is to go away from the things that won you an MVP award and put you in like top 5 player in the league every single season conversations.
Then there's the piece of the knee brace. Is he going to wear that on a regular occasion when he's out there on the floor? Is he going to keep it on when he does have it? Is it going to be something else? Because we've seen the knee sleeve where he has the compression sleeve, both sides, because sometimes somebody might wear one on one leg, wear both. He wears both. Now the question is, again, is he going to wear that knee brace and be able to function the way that he should? We saw it in the playoffs. He was still able to average close to 33 points against the Knicks. But it can be a hindrance when you're out there thinking about it, allowing that to creep into your mind that the reason why I'm having a bad shooting night or I cannot elevate the way that I want is because mentally I have this brace on here restricting me from doing the things that I am so used to doing. I got to take this thing off. I got to shed this thing. And while we may not want him to have excuses for something, but that could be one of those things, especially in a loss where he's not himself. He's not playing like he's accustomed to playing. And that could get in the way. So those are some things. I mean, look, we already know, as Kyle just said, he's still going to be that same player that has won him the MVP, has had him in those discussions, have him making the All-Star team and the All-NBAs year after year after year as we discuss him. But now it's about, as he said, walking that walk and talking it, because it's about the championship. He put himself out there with that 25 to 30 pound loss, sharing that with everybody, saying that's the most important thing now in winning that championship and not worrying about those individual awards. Is that going to come to fruition for him, where he puts, not saying that he hasn't in the past, but he makes sure he puts team first when it comes to all of this, because it definitely rides on his shoulders. You may have Paul George and Tyrese Maxey to be those players that elevate their level of play and still lead you in series to get you wins once we get to the postseason. But it's all about him, because even if they get to the postseason, they finally move on to the Eastern Conference Finals, and Paul George and Tyrese Maxey are the ones that really got them to that point. He may not care, but that conversation will be out there if he did not have a good playoff performance in the second round and saying he needed the other two, because that's just what fans do. But he cannot worry about all those things. He just has to go out there, hoop, play basketball, and be ready and be available when the team needs him, and hope that he just simply stays healthy.
Devon, I appreciate you monologuing there for a couple minutes. Kyle and I had to deal with a troll in the chat.
It's all good.
Hey, Deion Sanders fans coming in here like he's won anything of consequence in college football. Certainly no disrespect to his NFL career, but Deion's disciples, GTFO, buddy. While we're on this subject, I think it's kind of a natural transition to where my head is at with Paul, and the big question with him. There's a lot of stuff we could get into, but I think the natural extension of what we're talking about with Joel, with the load management and navigating the season, is how often is Paul going to get the same courtesy, and what are the downstream effects of that? Because when the Tim Bontemps story that we talked about recently, interviewing Joel and some of the other guys in camp, suggested in that story, Paul is going to be not on probably the same plan as Joel, but some of these games, it's going to be both of them at the same time. And how aggressive will they get with protecting Paul? So we're going to get our first example here, right? It's going to be fairly tight to make that regular season opener for Paul after suffering the bone bruise in the preseason game against Atlanta. And on the one hand, it's like, hey, it's the opener. You want to have the shiny new free agent ready to go to play next to, at the very least, Tyrese Maxey, hopefully him and Joel Embiid. But if team medical staff looks at it and says, hey, look, a couple more days, you'll go from, let's say it's like 15% risk to 0, will they be aggressive about just like, yeah, we're not playing him tonight and we'll push off his debut until Friday? I don't know that yet. And that's something we're only really going to learn, even if it's like setting aside that example, we'll only learn over the course of the season just how much they feel they need to protect Paul as he gets into his late 30s.
Look, if there is any way you can get that risk factor down to 0%, you do it. Game 1 is not inherently any more valuable than game 37, just because at the start of the season, he does not have to be out there on the floor if there is any kind of a risk. So I really hope they have the right perspective on that one.
Well, I mean, I look at it and we think about the Embiid part with the 15 back-to-backs and whether he's going to play 2 at one point and just decide to go out there and do so, and he plays the game. And I've been still trying to figure out what that number might look like. We don't think it's going to be the 65 because he'll also have just other load management days. But I am curious of what that may look like for Paul George, because at that 65 and talking about a potential number of him maybe missing, 17 games on the season after having played a decent amount for the Los Angeles Clippers last season, is that something that they'll need? Does he get into a flow? And obviously now, if we don't know whether he's going to start the season or not, But if he doesn't, those would just be a couple of games that, of course, we have to scratch off right from the start. So I don't know what that looks like. But if the team is as good as we think it is, and as we talk about these players and what the rotation will look like a little bit later, and how Daryl Morey and Elton Brand have put together this really good roster, some of that stuff may not even matter once Nick Nurse gets a really good look at how they play. He's able to implement stuff, and it's not because of injury this season like it was a year ago. They had so many guys out when Nick Nurse was forced to play certain ways. When we talked about at the end of the season, how do we really evaluate Nick Nurse from a year ago? It was kind of tough because he had him beat out for a long period of time. Tyrese Maxey, broke his foot or whatever it was. Was it a broken foot? Something.
I don't remember something along those lines.
Where he missed a significant amount of time, and then you make that trade, and Robert Covington, all of a sudden, he's out. The Anthony Melton with the back issue, if they are able to get to relatively injury-free, just relatively, where guys are going to have little things that drop them from a lineup for maybe a week and drop them from a lineup for a game or two. But with the depth that they do have, and as we get into it here tonight, and Nick Nurse being able to understand what his lineups look like, I would hope that even missing Paul George or Joel Embiid for a game or two here and there, that they're in a good space. And based on how they try to manage it, depending on how they schedule it based on the actual schedule of games that they can sit against this particular team, this particular Charlotte. We always bring up those as examples, Charlotte's, Detroit's, and Washington's, and those types of games where you can sit those and still pick up a W, because you are going to have to play 4 games against New York, 4 games against Boston because of your Atlantic Division opponent. Those are going to be tough. 3 against Cleveland, Indiana. Not that I know exactly how many they're playing right off the top, but you're going to play 3, at worst 3, against those teams during the regular season, where you're able to schedule it out based on who the opponent may be, where you can rest against certain ones and hope that you're healthy, relatively healthy enough to still go out there and put out a team that you think can go out there and compete. And that's what I think is going to be very important. And I don't know how many Paul George is going to miss based on all of that.
I will say this, as much as we could say, if you roll out Maxey and a mostly healthy team otherwise, you could definitely beat the Detroits, the Charlottes, the Brooklyns of the world. And I don't think there's a lot of inherent risk there. I do think there does have to be some semblance of, you can't just we're only playing the full team against the Knicks or the Celtics or whoever, right? There's got to be rhythm. There's got to be working through your sets, your different defenses, right? You don't want to try to roll out a different zone look for the first time against a high-level team, or you don't want to introduce a new series of plays for the first time against contenders only. So there does need to be a balance. It can't just be I would say I generally agree with you, right? If you're going to try to, take games off, that those are the more obvious opportunities and save your bullets for, the best of the best of the best. But there does have to be some, caution about it, just so you can build things in those games. And one thing I sort of agree with Doc Rivers, which there are not many of those, quite frankly, that idea of old school load management where, Joel might play 25 minutes and they blow the doors off somebody and you just pull them. I'm in favor of games like that, right? Where you get him out there, he gets cardio in, and everybody does, right? Not just Joel, but he's the most prominent example. They get reps, they get cardio, game fitness, all that. And then they get him out of there and they win by 25 points. That's basically the ideal NBA regular season game for these guys.
Yeah. And that's something they did such a good job in November, December, even early January last year. They were blowing teams out. Embiid wasn't playing in the fourth quarter, keeping his minutes down.
Still getting 30.
Yep. Still going. Yeah. Including to the dismay of some when he was pursuing that streak. But
Me.
Yes. So hopefully they have enough firepower where they will blow some teams out and keep their minutes down. That's 100% a fair point.
All right. We haven't talked about Tyrese Maxey yet. We'll get to him. We'll get to some of the others as we keep this one going on this Friday. We're about 5 days away from the start of the regular season. Should be a fun one. As Kyle just mentioned, a good team. They play the Milwaukee Bucks. So right out of the chute, we get to see who's available, who's going to play, how they look. It's going to be a fun one. We'll talk about Maxey and more when we get back here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about a new friend of ours. That's the good people. You might have heard of them at HelloFresh. HelloFresh gives you farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store. Count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh delivers all the pre-portioned ingredients you'll need to make easy homemade meals. All the proteins, veggies, sauces, spices, and more arrive in your box, along with simple instructions that walk you through each step in the cooking process. HelloFresh has tons of options for whatever you're craving, so choose from a changing menu of over 50 recipes each week. Plus, take your pick from over 100 market add-on items like desserts, breakfast, and snacks. So I've used HelloFresh before. Sometimes we have to be like, well, we're waiting to try this. We want this. Like, I know our good friends at Rugged Road were like, man, I want one of those coolers to, put it to the test.
Don't get me started.
I've been through the test with HelloFresh, right? And I've really liked it for a couple reasons. One, I think the mental strain sometimes of going into the grocery store and having to be like, all right, I want to make this, but what do I need? What do I have at home? I haven't kept an itemized grocery list. I'm not the most organized person in that respect. HelloFresh cuts down on that a ton. You're getting good quality ingredients when you use HelloFresh. And frankly, it allows me to try things that maybe I wouldn't have gone out of my way to make on my own. And, maybe don't tell HelloFresh this, but in the past, I've actually used their food and their recipes as inspiration for like, I'll make it on my own another time, right? I know I'm taking money out of HelloFresh's pockets, and I'm not telling you to do that, but it's been great inspiration for me after I have a delicious meal for them to try to keep up with that in the future. So HelloFresh will give you some good food, and maybe it'll even give you some inspiration in the future. And here's the great part, guys. You can get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free Sixers. That's FREE Sixers. Applied across 7 boxes, new subscribers only, and it varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/free Sixers. It is America's #1 meal kit.
All right. And if you are hanging out this weekend, it's going to be some beautiful weather here in the area, and you want to meet Dr. J, Brian Westbrook, Seth Joyner, and many more, you got to go to tomorrow, the National Thoroughbred League at Parks Racing, and it's owning the day, the lineup of the 5 NTL races and Philadelphia's biggest day of racing outside of Pennsylvania Derby, the NTL Philadelphia Cup, hosted by Julius Erving himself, the Philadelphia Stallions co-owner. Yes, Dr. J. So again, Brian Westbrook, Seth Joyner, Freddie Mitchell. Some Giants will be there ahead of their matchup on Sunday. We like Beasley Reese. But, you can go say hi to Otis Anderson and Howard Cross as well. Go Birds, see how that pans out. It's a private beer garden with great brews on tap. The NTL Music Stage with Philly legends and other performers. Best in Philly food offerings. And again, just a great lineup of meet and greet with those former legendary athletes in this area. Fan fashion shows, dressing your derby best, strut your stuff in front of the crowd, and you may find yourself in the actual winner's circle. So go ahead and hang out at the NTL. Again, one more time, doors open at noon and races start at 2:30. We're partnering with NTL, by the way, to give diehard members exclusive access to the event. So if you're a diehard member, you get in this thing exclusively. Just show your email subscription at the gates for free admission. For more information, visit ntl.racing. All right, welcome back. HelloFresh. We work late nights, HelloFresh.
I would love
that would be perfect.
Some HelloFresh meals, so I don't have to slap together the most ridiculous meal you've ever seen out of other leftovers.
HelloFresh.
And things that are stuck in my
cupboard.
That?
Derek, how often do we sit there and be like, you know what? I'm getting a little hungry.
Well, there's... and the only thing we seem to have in here are like sweets and junk food. Yes. Yeah, so, it's not exactly.
Candy and delicious ice cold Coors Light. I would love something to pair with my Choose Chill. Let's put it
you
that way.
Hear that, HelloFresh? We like you. Kyle, it was a great read there. Now, just get some HelloFresh in here for us.
I'm stealing HelloFresh recipes. I've done it. That's how good they are.
And I'm not the greatest cook, so this will help. This will make it easy. Cook it real quick, put it in some Tupperware.
I'm a terrible cook, so if you give me step-by-step directions on how to do it, I'll pay a little extra for that. That's fine.
I'm not the greatest cook. I can feed you, but I'm not the greatest cook.
I use HelloFresh before I could do it.
All right.
I can make them.
All
and if I can make them, you can definitely make them.
See?
Hey, No, there's an endorsement.
All right, HelloFresh, make that happen. And we can sit back and watch Tyrese Maxey for 82 games and discuss it here.
Well,
at the
82
office.
games, but not the one tonight.
Not the one
Thank
tonight.
you, NBA.
That doesn't count as the 82. So with that,
6 preseason games, go to hell. That's what I say. That's what I say.
enough is enough. Enough is enough. Derek Tyrese Maxey in Kyle's piece, he talks about how it is that next step for him. Year number 5, first-time All-Star last season, and we're talking All NBA last season, and even going into this year, we were discussing where he ranks with the rest of the really, really good players in the league and where he might factor into that. A lot will be riding on him this season because of those load management nights, those rest nights, and the fact that we have 3 guys that can score. We talk about his defense. We discuss how he can carry a team. We saw some of that. But he also talked about last season when he did struggle because he did have to carry the team from time to time. Do you see a difference? Have you seen a difference from training camp through the preseason and now getting ready for it, even when he speaks of maybe that'd be a little bit different for him going into year number 5 where he can get over some of those defenses that he see?
Yeah, well, I know a couple of weeks ago we did a 1% Better show where we're talking about skills and what she's got to develop. We talked a little bit about maybe quickening up the shot, adding range to it. All those ranges are already incredible. The passing aspect to it and playmaking. And this is something, so I'm going to go a little different in terms of mentality. This is something we were talking about before the game the other day, Kyle and I, with another writer, no free promos. But we were talking about how at various points, he can, he'll be really aggressive when Joe's out, but he can still defer at times. And every coach has been like, be more aggressive, be more aggressive. You have the ultimate green light. Shoot whenever you're open. I want him, like he needs to put so much pressure on the other team's defense because he does have all of the skill sets to make this entire engine run. I just want to see him come out and when he's got an open shot, pull the trigger. Rich, I know, has been talking about 10 3-point attempts per game. That's been his thing that he has wanted for a couple of years now. Maxey gets close. I think he had, 8 per game last year. I'd like to see 9 or 10. That might be a little high. Like what is Steph averages like 11 or 12, right? He's over 10 every year. But there aren't that many people who average above 10. Maxey has
it's very difficult to get off 10, relatively high quality threes.
Maxey has the skill set. He has the ability to, if not exceed that, at least challenge it 9.5. I don't even care if there's a little dip in the percentage. If he shoots 36, 37%, but on higher volume, I just want him to be aggressive and be a focal point each and every night. And certainly he is. Like he came out and averaged 26 per game. But I think he still leaves a little bit on the table.
Yeah. And look, if we're talking about, Joel's you could probably right now take at least 20 games off the table for Joel Embiid. There are 15 back-to-backs. Yep. Even if they are otherwise just like he's playing all the games, take another 5 off the table. That's 20 games worth of Tyrese. You're running the show, and it's really just you and Paul George as the main guys on this team. And so, what happens with that? What does that do to his averages, his shot selection, his mentality, right? Like I think one of the things that I want to see from him this season is, will he come out firing on those nights when Joel is out? Because I think he has a lot of times shown an inclination to settle into the game. He comes on more in like second half, third quarter, fourth quarter, certainly as the crunch time guy, the closer, so to speak, in part because Joel has always been one of the most dominant, if not the most dominant first quarter, first half guy in the league. Like Joel comes out and he burns the nets down. Like he's scoring 20 points in the first quarter pretty frequently, honestly, which is a crazy thing to think about. So will Tyrese hunt his own shot early? And is that the best thing for the team? Like that's another thing too, right? Maybe you need to get Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre, Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry, some of these other complimentary guys going. It'll be an interesting line for him to walk this year, where last year where he got to be the star of the show, the expectations were still not that high. I think now with the new contract coming off the All-Star season and the year-to-year growth that we've seen from him every season, I think people are going to say there are no excuses on the nights that Joel's out. They got to go out there and win, and he's got to go out there and perform at a high level. I'm excited to see what that looks like.
And the defensive side is the other piece with him, where he's openly spoken about how he doesn't want to be that weak link in that starting lineup. if those three wings are out there with Joel Embiid and he's the other one where they're hunting him down, he doesn't want to be that weak link. We've seen him compete, but we've also seen him where he's gotten his head lost elsewhere out there on the floor. So that's going to be something that we do watch for with that natural development, again, that growth that he has, and just a personal goal of his where he wants to be better at it. So show and improve, 1% better. We always speak about it. It's his thing. All right, how much better are you going to be defensively where you are not that weak link, where you can pick up somebody 70 feet away from the basket, where you can pick them up at half court and not allow them to get into their offensive steps just to disrupt things and make it easy, not make it easy for them. That's going to be a big, big point of it. Now, the only question with that is, all right, you have those guys that are two-way guys. That's just who they are as point guards, and they can do both, and they are legit at it. Can he now pick up that slack and not lose it on the offensive end where he's exerting so much energy on the defensive side because he is getting caught, because they're being called over to get him on a switch, and still go down there and do what he does on the offensive end? You don't want to see that guy that can – I've got all the energy in the world on the offensive end, but when it was time to defend on this on the other side, I don't have it right now because I had to exert so much energy. So we'll see. We'll see about that.
I don't think that's going to happen. If I had to guess, I think if Tyrese is taking a breather anywhere, it will be on the defensive end. I think he's prideful enough, but I don't.
I do too.
I also think like most of his areas of improvement defensively aren't even necessarily like effort related or energy exertion related. It's communication, it's recognition, 100%. It's anticipation. It's a little bit getting through screens, but that's as much physicality as it is just sheer effort. I think he can improve defensively without expending a whole lot more energy that would take him out of his offensive flow.
That guy's good. If anybody I feel like we can count on with this basketball team to give the effort, to not get caught too much and be prideful enough to come back and try to make up for it, it's him. And that's just who he is as a player, as a person, and he's going to have a really good season for this 76ers team. You hope he doesn't have to miss time again for any injury like he did, but even during that time, you just felt his absence because that's how good he was for the 76ers a season ago. We've run through the top three, the top tier of this basketball team. Now we have to get through the rest of the roster and the important players that are considered the role players. What will those roles be? Can they take an extra step for those roles that they'll have? We saw what Kelly Oubre did against the Brooklyn Nets, albeit in the preseason game. Will we see more of that during the regular season? We'll talk about that and much, much more here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. Basketball season is, in fact, back. It starts on Tuesday. Sixers begin on Wednesday. So if you want to make sure you place some future bets as the season gets underway, you have to go with our good friends from Bet365. Never ordinary. Over 90 million users worldwide. Live streams, 780,000 events per year, and early payout offers across NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB. What more can you ask for? Well, I'll give you one more. Live in-game betting where you can actually watch the live stream while you're live betting to know exactly what's going on as you place that wager on Bet365. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bet when you bet just $5. Use the code PHLY365 to sign up, deposit 10, and place a bet for $5 to get 200 in those bonus bets. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. You can hit the NHL, Major League Baseball, NFL, all going on right now, and the basketball where you get those early payouts for NBA and college basketball when they start later in the year as well. If you're a winner, your team gets up by 20 points. That was one of the offers that they did have for Bet365, early payout offers with instant payout on straight bets, parlay selections marked as winners. Download the app, use code PHLY365 when you sign up for the 100% parlay boost. Double your winnings on parlays with Bet365's 100% parlay boost. Download the app, use code PHLY365 when you do, in fact, sign up and get that 200 in bonus bets when you place a bet for $5. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Also have to tell you about our good friends, our other presenting sponsor, both right here in this block, and that is Rothman Orthopedics. Joints aching, hands cramping. Well, you got to go see our good friends at Rothman because they got you covered. At Rothman Orthopedics, practicing specialized care has been their passion for over 35 years. Their mission, high quality, compassionate, and affordable care rooted in research. And they take care of you, whether it's hip, knee, spine, you name it. They have a team for each body part right in your backyard, so you can cross over the defense, you can drain those jump shots, and root for your teams like no other fans in the country. They are Rothman Orthopedics, and they specialize in you. Patients will find when you deal with Rothman Orthopedics the full spectrum of orthopedic care, from diagnosis to discharge. They provide their patients with every service and procedure necessary, such as x-rays, orthotics and bracing, MRIs, physical therapy, and much more. I am a walking billboard for Rothman right now because of my injuries, and they can do the same for you. It's not just the volume of 255,000 patients with their care, the consults the Rothman is most proud of, but instead it's their commitment to improving each of those patients' lives through their service and care. So if you need help, you need it now, or you're already trying to set up something for the very near future because you know you need to get checked out, Rothman Orthopedics specializes in orthopedics and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. All right, welcome back. Let's get into the role players here, the other guys, as we would like to call them here. What are your burning question, your main question there when we talk about Kelly Oubre, Kyle?
I mean, I think it's a pretty simple one. Is he going to be the guy that he was last year, which he didn't completely shed all his career habits, but I think was a better version of himself on both ends of the floor for most of the year? Or will he, after, he's kind of staring down his NBA life last summer, right? Where he gets a minimum contract despite scoring 20 points a game, ends up at the end of the summer like, what happened? What am I doing? And I think that seemed to bring him into focus a little bit. Will he have that same focus this season? And will he still have the same level of buy-in on both ends of the floor that we saw for a good chunk of last season? I don't know. I can't tell you that. I will say that he's gotten praise from Nick Nurse in training camp, and you guys were there hearing all the same things as I did about he's now more of a conduit between the coaching staff and the new guys, right? Like he can pass on, this is how we do things and all that. And I wrote in the story today, it's like, I don't know if the phrase veteran leader Kelly Oubre excites me or terrifies me. It's kind of both at the same time. And so how does he take to, being back here another year, having higher expectations than just like, hey, you're a minimum guy, and if we get something from you, great. You got to be one of the guys here, one of the top 5, 6 on a team that not only wants to contend, arguably needs to contend, or a lot of things are going to change in the near future. So the way I wrote it in the story was, will the bloom come off of the rose for Oubre? I think is kind of how I'm thinking about it. So I'm optimistic based on things we've seen and heard, but you just never know. Human nature is a weird thing.
Yeah. And sort of to that point, like there were 2 key aspects to last year. The first was defensive buy-in, and I thought he did a great job of that. Very impressed. That was the one thing where if I did a 180 on him, which I didn't, I did a slight shift. The big reason
like a
for
90.
That, yeah, the big reason for that is because he bought in defensively in a way I hadn't seen when he was on
100%
the garbage teams that he played on in the past.
Yeah.
Now, the next step in his evolution has to be the shot selection, and I brought up the numbers with his three-point shooting time and time again. Open catch and shoot, about a 37% shot. Contested catch and shoot drops to about a 25% shot. He's just got to stop taking those contested three-pointers, whether it's off the dribble, whether it's off the catch. He doesn't make them. He's not good at them. Kills possessions, kills momentum. That's his next.
To be clear, early clock, because if sometimes he's going to have to take
left,
the
yes.
yeah.
No. I'm talking early clock
Yes.
when you clearly are going to have a better option throughout the course of that possession than that shot he is taking. That is the next step in his evolution. I was intrigued by the progress he made at the very end of the season as a passer. I'd love to see that, continue along with it. But I think the one really key aspect that I'm going to be focusing on all year is that shot selection for him.
Albeit the Brooklyn Nets the other night, where he was kind of the guy that had it going.
Yeah, it's hard to really rate preseason games because so many people are out. And
there are a lot of no,
yes
yes shots in that game for me where I was like, what are you doing? Oh, great. It went in.
Including
But
Kelly? Like
no,
you talked about the one off the dribble.
Specifically
Yeah.
Kelly.
Oh, okay,
Like,
okay.
He took shots in that
Right.
game that he made, but I was like, why the hell are you taking that shot?
Including that second 3-pointer.
And that's
that he
what,
made
like,
off the
so,
bounce.
you know, I do the good, the bad, the ugly, all these games, right? I had him in the bad, despite the fact he scored 18 points and a half. Because I was like, I don't want you doing that. Like, when he attacks the rim and beats closeouts and does stuff like that, love that. When he takes open threes, I don't even, like, I care that he makes them, but I don't necessarily, it's like, hey, good shot. You know your place in the offense. When he's hitting like a 28-foot contested three, if it goes in, it's just like, great. There was an act of God that helped that go in, but I'm not excited for it. I'm not like, if I'm in the coach's room, if I'm in a film session, I'm like, you know what I want to see more of, Kelly? Shots like that. And so that's how I try to look at it with him. But again, I agree with Derek. I think the defensive stuff was really important for him last year. It's the most consistent buy-in he has ever shown that I've seen. And I think if you get that out of him this year, considering that you have Caleb Martin, you have Paul George, you have all these athletes around him on the floor, he can be even more disruptive and more impactful on that end of the floor this year. And that's the hope for me.
One of the things I heard in there was one of the new parts of our post-game shows that we're going to have during the season. And Bree, all I heard was it's going to be a lot of Kelly Oubre in that one feature that we have that we'll get ready for the season. It's going to be fun. But you know what I like about number one with the Oubre thing is you wrote it in the piece at allphly.com, and that is him feeling wanted and accepted from last season where he was in that place of that 1-year deal. His NBA career, not necessarily hanging by a thread, but he's on a minimum contract for a guy that can still play.
He scored 20 points a game and nobody wanted him.
27, exactly. So now coming into this season, and he has a 2-year deal. May not sound like a lot, but based on from where he was a season ago to where he is now, and it was done early with that 2-year deal and giving a player option, should he have a much better season than he did a year ago where he can opt out and probably get more and could potentially do that by staying in Philadelphia with another multi-year deal. That's the one thing that stood out to the being a veteran and having young guys lean on him and his relationship with Nick Nurse. And even now seeing that Ewa, where he and Nick Nurse were fighting the officials at the end of that Clippers game last year, that they have each other's backs, that he feels wanted. And if he is a starter, because Caleb Martin is the one that's coming off the bench, we'll get to him next, that's one thing that really stands out to me is that he feels settled, he feels comfortable in the spot where it's not the Charlotte Hornets wondering if he's coming off the bench still scoring 20 if it means anything at all for a team that's playing basically for nothing instead of a team that's playing for a contention of a championship this upcoming season. So that's really what stands out to me is him feeling accepted and wanted in this city and most importantly within that locker room, that coaching staff with his players as well as teammates.
Yeah. So I think we can get through Caleb Martin pretty quickly because I think his is very straightforward.
Just
is he going
shots.
to make shots?
Yeah.
Right? Because
he's not going to play outside of himself.
No.
Like he knows his limitations. He's just got to make shots.
He is like, if you're looking at a guy who's going to take Heat culture with him, it's that guy, right? Like he's a no frills, all about his business, multi-skilled guy who knows who he is, doesn't generally take tons of bad shots, tons of shots, period. He's already shown he's willing to come off the bench and you know, came in preseason games and he's playing hard, right? Like that, the Atlanta game had that one chase down block that the Hawks were not happy about. It got called for a foul that we thought at least he got clean on the ball. It might have been a little body
that's challenge in the regular season.
But that's him playing balls to the wall in a meaningless preseason game. And so that's what you're getting from Caleb. You'll get probably close to the same thing every night. It's really just in the playoffs, he's Ray Allen, essentially, or has been the last couple of runs he's been on. But in the regular season, he is about as average shooters get. And the difference between Caleb being an average shooter and above average raises the ceiling of this team significantly if he's able to be a consistently pretty good shooter.
Yeah. And I think he's probably going to be streaky. Like I think we can hope that he's a better shooter all he wants. I think the track record is pretty clear, but it is really weird how he turns into Ray Allen in the playoffs. It's wild.
Just show him Boston. That's all you need to do. Show him Boston, and he's good to
Which
go.
is good because we need one of those players who plays better when
to
they
win
play
one
Boston.
game for against that Boston. Let's take one final pause, and we come back and we'll keep it going. Maybe a little bit more with Caleb Martin matched up with some of these other players here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
All right, guys, we've told you about him before, but if you've got a lot going on, if one of those things that you have to do is flooring, Empire Today is where you want to turn to. With Empire Today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today is so good that they do have some copycats, but those copycats can't beat Empire Today on quality, service, or speed, so they advertise low-quality products that Empire simply won't carry. Empire Today keeps shopping for floor simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need, not to overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. And Empire Today has a virtual floor designer, which is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. Just snap a picture and instantly see how the new floors will look in your room. Flooring is all that Empire Today does. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. They also service their
breathing
own warranties.
flooring sounds unsafe, by the way, but I'm not going to stop you, Empire.
They also service their own warranties, so if you do have a problem with the breathing, you won't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number.
Sorry for derailing the read. I never dawned on me to think
Schedule
about that.
a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use a promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/PHLY for details.
Well, gang, we've talked about the diehard program a little bit more today, but just a quick reminder.
Following Kyle's earlier advice, you can just copy the articles and paste them so you don't...
Oh, stop it. Yeah. So our diehard program, obviously, you get access to the exclusive content that's behind our paywall. Be a ton from Derek, ton from me. You're already getting it from our Eagles guys. Fran, Bo, ZB, the King, just wrote a book as well. What doesn't he do? Charlie on the Flyers beat, Jim Salisbury covering the Phillies, which they're in the offseason, and now is when the important stuff happens, when the heads roll. So you want to have access to that. But you also get access to our Discord, our members-only Discord, where we're active all the time. We're talking about all kinds of, at least Derek and I, can't speak for this guy in the middle here, getting involved in a lot of NBA discussions. We had a long thing about Chris Paul and me arguing with Vince about Joel Embiid and all sorts of. We have a lot of fun in there and try to give you guys some exclusive nuggets within there. You also can get discounts on events like the Eagles-Giants watch party that we have this Sunday for the PHLY Eagles guys at State Street Pub in Media, Pennsylvania. Believe there will be some giveaways there. I am blanking on what the giveaways are.
I know it's going to be tickets to the...
I think it's box seats against the Commanders. Yeah. It's only $10 to go there and get in the running. Also get some great beverage deals while you're there. So head out to State Street Pub on Sunday. Also, just become a diehard. We would really appreciate it. It helps us do all the great work that we hope that we're doing around here. And it brings us closer to you in the audience. So go to allphly.com. Go to the diehard section. Get up with us today.
I'm hungry.
You're hungry?
Yeah, man. HelloFresh.
How's HelloFresh coming out of nowhere?
That was a half an hour ago, Devon.
Did we just pull you out of like a time warp in there? Or like what's going on in that middle chair?
There like, man, I need some food.
I need some food. Yeah, no question.
Hey, I hear that. I might have to. I guess HelloFresh probably can't get me food this quickly, but if I go after the show, maybe by tomorrow or Monday or something like that.
And then Chris had a sandwich out there earlier while we were getting ready to do the show.
Son of a...
Yeah, there's that. All right, let's get to another guy that's going to be a big piece for us.
Just randomly, I'm hungry.
I am hungry. It's like those late nights that we'll have here as well. Eric Gordon, as we talk about Caleb Martin and the potential starts and not getting starts as well. The Eric Gordon piece, we saw a little glimpse of it. He played just under 8 minutes in this last game against Brooklyn, 8 points in that time, knocked down 2 threes. But one of the questions is, can he still hold up that Kyle wrote up in the story? Can he still hold up? Can he play a decent amount of minutes? How many games is he going to play? Where does he fit? But the one thing we do know is he can knock down shots.
Well, and that's where like my head goes. Can he hold up defensively specifically?
That
like,
was exactly where my head's at.
Because if you can get even obviously he's not going to be as good of a defender as Kelly or Caleb, depending on which one. If Eric Gordon does enter the starting lineup, whoever he's replacing will be the better defender than him. But his shooting is very, very, very important, very valuable. I think they prioritize that. I think they value that. The question is, how big is that drop off going to be? If he can hang defensively to the point where he can give you 25 minutes per game with that spacing and not lose too much, that to me is the key to the entire season for Eric.
I could not agree with you more. I think it's key both to that starting group that maybe he'll be in, but definitely to backup groups, right? Because as of right now, and we'll get to him in a minute, Kyle Lowry is the guy we're expecting to be that backup point guard. And Nick Nurse has said directly, part of the reason you start Gordon is to split up their minutes. And that's really all about athleticism and defense and who those guys can cover at this stage of their careers. Now, again, 1 quarter of a preseason game, he had a very good defensive quarter against Brooklyn the other night against a bad team in a meaningless game. All that being noted, the want to is there. Like I think he is engaged enough that if he can put himself in the right spots and hasn't fallen completely off a cliff defensively or athletically, I should say, then if he's competent, then that 3-point shooting is just, he could close games. It's not just like, oh, he's a token starter. He could be a guy in at the end of games for floor spacing that, ball swings around the perimeter after Joel is doubled or Tyrese gets trapped, and you feel very good about a wide open Eric Gordon 3. So yes, that's what it's all about to me. It's like, if he can defend, he goes from, he's like a 15-minute a game guy, maybe get some floor spacing, to he could play 25 plus minutes and play a really meaningful role on this team.
The guy can still shoot. And we saw that in the limited amount of time in the preseason. We saw that even when we would see some of the post-practice shooting drills that they would have, the guy can still knock down some shots. And occasionally he can still finish in the basket. The other night when Roy and I were doing the post-game show, we jokingly talked about that other basket, his third basket, where he made in transition. And the television, they were talking about how, he slowed up to make sure that the defender was, he is, but he's also not as fast as he used to be because in that open floor, the younger Eric Gordon, he was gone and he was going to flush that one in transition. But he also has really good body control. He had that when he was in high school in Indiana and once he got to the pros. And even at this age, that has not gone anywhere. The IQ is still there. As they talked about him playing those good defensive minutes for the time that he was out there against Brooklyn, still finishing at the basket and understanding how to use your body to get the shot off, maybe get a foul, get to the free throw line if you missed the layup opportunity. Maybe that's what it is, but he is still a smart basketball player. He's going to play some good minutes. He might even start some games. It could be opponent dependent of who they're playing at that time, where Nick Nurse decides, I want to bring Caleb Martin off the bench and have Eric Gordon start based on who they're playing. Kyle Lowry might have a night where he is on that load management where Eric Gordon can go back to the bench because he's not going to be teamed up with him. Instead, he might be teamed up with Tyrese Maxey a little bit more in that particular game. So all of that stuff is going to factor in with Eric Gordon, but he's definitely in that rotation when we talk about who he is as a player. Speaking of Kyle Lowry, he's going to have some load management games.
Yes.
He knows how to play. He's had some good flashes in the preseason, albeit as little as they have been, he's had some flashes. The one question that you did bring up is what we talked about even before they re-signed him. If Nick Nurse and those guys decide to bring him back, or even he simply wants to come back to Philadelphia, is he going to lean too heavily on Kyle Lowry because of their relationship and that trust that he has in him?
Yeah. And look, I will also give Nick some slack in this department, right? Because some of it will be, can Tyrese as a lone ball handler be good enough and dynamic enough as a playmaker that Nurse doesn't feel in the back of his mind like, I need a guy I can trust with the ball in his hands out there. Because as I dove into, here, what rotation combinations or lineup combinations might look like on Joel days, but specifically on non-Joel days, I think it might be unavoidable that Lowry and Maxey are going to play together on the floor on the non-Joel days, because the way the lineups and the rotations are going to shake out, it's inevitable to some degree. But can Maxey stave that off with the passing, the playmaking? And can Nurse put Lowry in what is probably like what we'll call a responsible sized role, where he's still going to have an impact on the game. He's still going to show the intelligence, the cunningness, like the flopping, the taking charges, taking the relocation threes, making plays in transition, all that stuff, but just in a more compact role. And frankly, will Lowry be okay with that? Because we know hyper competitive guy, part of why he wanted out in Miami was role starts shrinking. He wants to go somewhere where he can play and has a chance to compete. And so we're going to see, there are a lot of different factors going on there. I think he can still be a helpful guy as long as they're not asking him to do too much.
I mean, if Kyle Lowry thinks he's going to get 30 minutes per game, like, there needs to be a serious talk.
100%.
Because he played way too much. He didn't play 30, but he was playing upper 20s last year, and that was way more than I expected after that buyout.
Yeah.
I certainly agree that Maxey's showing enough playmaking juice, and Nick showing enough trust in Maxey to be the sole and primary ball handler is going to be key, because that duo is not going to hold up defensively, and they definitely overused it for a significant portion. And there's just so many of those guard combinations. You mentioned Gordon, that it's tough to see them work out well together. And we haven't even talked about Reggie Jackson, who's probably on the periphery of the rotation. Jared McCain, obviously, hope he is better and ready to go soon, but he's a rookie. You don't expect much from him, especially in the first half of the season. But there's just a lot of those guard combinations that are tough to fit next to each other defensively. That's in part why Gordon maybe having a little bit more left defensively is a key, and also why Maxey and the playmaking and the passing is key, so you don't then have to turn to some of these combinations that would be so optimal defensively.
I want to ask both of you guys this, since you brought up both the other backup guard candidates. Do we agree that McCain is probably in front of Reggie right now?
Yes.
Because based on how they were used in the preseason, not that that's everything, it does seem like Reggie is last in that group. And part of that is because McCain is going to play like more of an off-guard role, and that gives him a different sort of utility, with Lowry being in front of Jackson for the true point guard type of minutes. But that was the read that I have coming out of these games.
Yeah, and I really don't want to see Reggie outside of when Maxey and Lowry are off the floor. That's when I think Reggie has a role, either if Maxey misses a game, God forbid, because he never misses games, or Kyle gets a rest day, then I think Reggie gets promoted into that backup point guard spot. I don't want to see Reggie playing next to a point guard. Like, the catch and shoot isn't strong enough and consistent enough. Defensively, he probably holds up a little better than Jared, because I think he is a little bit quicker. He's got that wingspan. He doesn't maybe have some of the strength that Jared does, but I think Jared's off-ball shooting and gravity would overweigh that.
The thing for me is he's closer to Jared McCain than he is to Kyle Lowry, Reggie Jackson, at this stage of his career. He's not really the ball handler that we talk about running the offense, although we've seen him do it for many years in the NBA. He's more that McCain piece. So why is Jared McCain in front of him? I guess because he did play a little bit better. We saw in game one against the Breakers when he came in that third quarter, and he just went off and scored his points very quickly, got in and out, and it was very, very easy for him to do what he did against that Breakers team. Since then, we really only saw Reggie Jackson in the Nets game. We saw him out there on the floor because there was no Kyle Lowry. Reggie Jackson did get in there for a little bit, but McCain seems like the Atlanta game, he got in really late. Jared McCain did, but we also didn't see Reggie Jackson in that one for a while. So I am a little surprised by that, but if it tracks with everything that they said in the training camp, starting from Joel to everybody else of how good Jared McCain was, then I guess it makes sense for them to get that early look and see what it looks like and see how the pairings do work when it comes to the backcourt with McCain out there on the floor with the other ball handler, and then the wings also on the floor with them. So I guess it kind of tracks based on what everyone was saying when it comes to that. So I want to tell you one more time, make sure as we're talking about all this ahead of the season, go to allphly.com to read Kyle's piece as we're breaking it all down here right now, breaking down the players, discussing them all, where it fits, where the rotations are, at least right now, ahead of the start of the season, just 5 days away. and what it all looks like for them. So allphly.com. Derek's going to have his stuff as well. We're going to have some joint pieces on the site as we get ready for this very, very important basketball season upcoming here, discussing the top 10 players, where they all fit, the rotational guys, some of the guys that have fallen out a little bit, who's ahead of who, and what it all looks like. They do have a game tonight, so make sure you go to allphly.com, become a diehard member. Let's get to another really important guy that we have not talked about much. Of course, we haven't really had to. We have mentioned his name, and that is Andre Drummond. The other guy that we know is definitely in the rotation as a key player for the 76ers because of when Embiid is out, and also because you don't want to lose too much when Embiid is playing and he is the primary backup. We've discussed it plenty of how the on and off numbers look when Embiid is on the floor, off the floor, and when the other backups that were here before just simply could not hold up those leads that the Sixers had. It's partially why he was paid what he was paid, and we discussed it at the time, but Andre Drummond is going to be key for this basketball team. One of the questions, though, Kyle, that you did have was, how will he operate defensively in space? We know how he is defensively inside, gobbling up those rebounds, both on the defensive end and the offensive end. But how does he operate in space, even on the offensive end, what we talked about, KYP, know your personnel when you're passing him a basketball at a certain spot. But we also saw against the Brooklyn Nets where Andre Drummond said, hey, I got the rock 40 feet away from the basket. I'm bringing it up. And you know what? I'm taking you to the hoop, posting you up a little bit to get into my shot. And it did work against the Brooklyn Nets. It did actually work. But some of the question is the spacing of how he is going to operate defensively in space. He's a little unlike Joel when Joel does have to defend away from the basket a little bit.
Yeah. And look, Joel has his problems too. And this is more of a playoff focused problem. I'm not especially worried about Andre Drummond as a regular season played 25 to 30 minutes when Joel is out, or especially when he's only playing 15-ish minutes when Joel is available. Like, he is overqualified for that type of role. In the playoffs is where I think this stuff really matters. And so I'll go a different way for right here, right now. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I'm going to keep a close eye on, how does he handle playing out of the short roll and Tyrese Maxey getting trapped, right? Because what we've seen in the preseason is that he's coming up high to screen Tyrese's man, and teams are looking at two options. Either we can drop and give Tyrese Maxey a path to the basket or a pull-up three, or they can trap him and say, Andre Drummond, catch the ball around the three-point line and figure something out with it in a 4-on-3. And it has been not a complete adventure, but there have been possessions where it's like, okay, Dre, like, figure out what you're doing here. And so that's one of the big early season storylines I'm looking at for him, is how does he react to how defenses are playing Tyrese, because that's going to impact, his turnover numbers. Certainly if he's barreling over guys in the paint, if he's driving too overzealously and picking up charges, things like that. How does he handle those 4-on-3s? I think he's a good passer, but I think he's a good passer in a different context, not this type of one. And he's also an adventurous passer.
I was going to say,
I don't know that you necessarily want to encourage in the short roll stuff, because there could be some
strong and wrong, baby.
Some real highlights or lowlights in
I'm
that
not
scenario.
sure I necessarily say he's a good passer. He's certainly a willing passer and an adventurous passer. And every now and then that will look good. And then once or twice a game, it'll be like, whoa, what are you doing? All right, we wasted enough time on everything else with Andre. His career high is 5 3-pointers made. Setting the over-under at 15.
Under.
Over, baby.
You said made?
Yes.
You said made under.
No, that's one of the few things I'm tracking for every
Hammer
year.
it. Hammer the over.
He's got to hit over
Let's
15.
go.
Absolutely.
I believe in you,
his career
Andre.
highs.
Make those damn threes.
Bet 365. if it's available.
We should get a prop bet for that.
Oh, we'll definitely put that one on there. Yeah. But no, I mean,
we need the post-it notes like they have on Inside, and like I'm hammering that over 15 threes.
Now that is going to be a fun one. I encourage the 3-point shooting from the corner. I encourage it, but I don't know if he's going to make over 15.
Definitely, he's definitely setting a new career high, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Over the 5, yeah, but I don't know that he's going to. Yeah, no, I don't know about that one, but. Listen, man. I mean, it's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be an adventure from time to time. He's gonna be a candidate for some of the stuff that we have geared up for post game and during the week for our 3 p.m. shows. But he was brought here for a reason, and I think he will. I think he will certainly be valuable in that role when Embiid is out of the game, when he's just the primary backup, and when he's starting. He's going to have to stay out of foul trouble sometimes, but he's also going to have to be under control, like the guy said on the offensive end. The push shot is something that he's good at. He can do that. But he has to know that when you mention barreling down, he's going to one dribble drop step. He's going to one dribble think he can spin into something and get that shot off. He is quick. He has good feet, good footwork there, but sometimes they're going to beat him to a spot. And he has to be careful not to, again, barrel in or just dip that shoulder into somebody where that's going to turn into an offensive foul. He has to be careful with that because we're going to get to Yabusele, but we still don't know the answer to what he is in a regular season game as a backup 5 to him, where Andre Drummond is going to be very important of staying on the floor. He just is. He's going to be important.
I think Yabu is probably one we can do pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, go to him next. Make shots.
Yes, but also stemming out of that. So my other thing is like, is he going to just get trapped between positions and not have a regular role? Which I think for a guy who's coming back to the NBA, this is going to be a big ask of him to be like, hey, tonight you're the backup center. Okay, tonight you have to play power forward off of Joel Embiid or Andre Drummond. Like that is, for someone who, it's certainly not guaranteed that he's going to be a good rotation player. This is like a career defining moment for him right now. I don't envy him in that way. Like it's a path for him to get on the floor regularly, which that in itself is good, but it's, different responsibilities as a center, especially. He's got to be loud, right? Like the communication is so important back there, especially because he is not a particularly big or impactful rim protector. Like he's not going to impact shots there with all that much frequency. So a lot riding on him being a multi-positional, not impact guy, but at least like adequate guy as a bench piece. And so we'll see. Shot 50% from 3 so far in the preseason, which not banking on that, but if he at least is in the high 30s, that's a huge difference maker for him.
He had a couple of
and this
memorable
team.
ones where you were like, oh, that air ball wasn't great. But then he followed it up and knocked down 2 in a row where the amnesia, he just let it go and just shoot it again, fire it up. And it's slow, but it looks good. And most of the time he's got the space. They're leaving him, so he doesn't have to really take a shot against a contested closeout where you're worried about that elongated release. Nah, he's got some room. He's got some time. He's got some space. They're going to leave him open and see if he knocks them down. And when we were listening to the broadcast the other night when they were playing Boston, because they were playing Boston, and they were saying, yeah, leave him open and leaving Drummond open because they are not able to knock down those shots. They have to prove to the 15 of Drummond and the 50% in the preseason, they have to prove to the defenses that they are able to knock down those shots when given.
Yep.
So final guy, and I'm surprised to be saying this, but I think if it's not a lock, it's pretty close to one. I think KJ Martin is the 10th guy in the rotation.
Yeah, easily.
And I don't think it's
certainly to start. Yeah.
At least to start, but it doesn't seem like it's that debatable at this point. He has played well. And as we've discussed, he is trusted by Nurse and the staff more than Ricky is.
He can play any position in the front court, even though he does not have the shooting ability as you would like for someone at his size to come in off the bench. You would hope that he's more offensive minded, especially behind the 3-point line in today's game. But he does make up for it for his athleticism, the hustle, the energy that he does bring to the game. Being an athlete and being available to be one of those guys that they just simply have not had over the years on the wing, he can do that. And we may not see the small ball 5 stuff that we saw a season ago because they do have.
Frankly,
Yabusele.
I hope we don't. Like I don't think that. I mean, even with the
unless
improved wing
Yabusele
stuff,
does get hurt. I mean, he gets in foul trouble or Drummond gets in foul trouble, and they have to make up for some time there and they have to just patchwork a few 5 minutes and they get a few from KJ Martin. At least we've seen it where hopefully it's not too much with him out there on the floor. But he has earned everything that we've talked about, and we've given him player of the game a few times because of how good he has been.
And I would say part of the reason I don't want to see those KJ at the 5 small ball minutes, he has to be a 3-point shooter. Like him more than Yabusele, I think, has to prove that, because Yabusele has been a willing shooter the whole preseason. KJ's taken 1 3 in like 105 minutes. Yeah. And that's just, you're 6'6". That's just not a sustainable way to play in the modern NBA. And I know he's worked on it. He says he feels confident in it, but we haven't seen it on any level really so far. And so that's the big question, on top of, frankly, how much time did they give him pre-deadline? Because I think we all assume, even if he would have to like blow the doors off people,
he would have to
stay here through the deadline. Yes. He would have to be much, much better on a much more consistent basis up until February for them to hold on to him. So it's really like, how much runway do they give him to do that before they look around and say, look, Ricky's not as polished, doesn't have as much experience in the league quite yet, but development time for him is more valuable than, like, KJ's better right now, but there is no future for KJ here more than likely. So how does that play out? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, and I do agree that I think he is not going to play center because they have better options at center now, which wasn't necessarily the case at times last year. But if he wants to be more than, I'm holding this spot as a power forward until, Nick trusts Ricky, then he has to be able to shoot. You just can't play alongside Joel Embiid or Andre Drummond, for that matter, as a forward and not shoot. So he's talked a lot about improving it. He talked a little bit after the game about why he hasn't taken any, haven't come in the flow of the game, of the offense. Okay, like in 105 minutes or whatever, like there's probably been an opportunity to shoot more than one. Throughout the course of the year, he has to be willing to take them. And that's a key point with Yabu, who's got a lot to prove as well. At the very least, he is willing to take them. And Devon just brought it up where he airballed 1 and then immediately hit 2 right after that. There's an amnesia, which is great for basketball players, a little less so for podcasters. But basketball players need that. And Ricky right now, KJ right now, for as much as he may be talking about having worked on a shot, and the coaches are talking about working on a shot and believing in the shot, until he actually shows that he himself believes in that shot, there's a limit to how much you can play him. And he is one of the more dynamic defenders on the team. He's certainly one of the more dynamic rim runners in transition on the team. But to get on the floor, he is going to have to make shots. There's just no way about it.
The one thing I'll say when we were at training camp was watching him.
He looked fine in the open gym.
He looked fine in the open gym, but for me, I still thought they were strong. And they were not. It looked good coming off his fingertips, but when you see it then in the air and, of course, hitting the rim because it didn't go in, it's like, all right, this is not who he is. They're still too strong. And in the game, these were just shooting drills with the coaches. They're still strong. And maybe it's affecting him a little bit within the game where he just takes that 1 in that 100-plus minutes because he's still thinking about them a little bit. And that's part of the problem. If you're thinking about him, you already missed the shot. And that's something that he has to get over out there on the floor because they are going to leave him open, and he has to feel confident. He has to feel confident, number one, of which spot is his spot. Is it top of the key? Is it wing? Is it the short corner? He has to be comfortable taking whatever shot it is that he believes he can make at a better percentage and knock that shot down to be exactly what you two are talking about. And he has to show it. Everything else, though, he has been really, really good so far through training camp and preseason. KJ Martin, surprised he's played this well, but he is in the top 10 of the rotation for Nick Nurse's team right now, and I think that's very clear.
All right. And that's the 10.
That is the 10.
I mean, look, I think Ricky will probably get chances to play. I think Jared is – I think he's closer to playing maybe than Ricky is at this point based on the preseason, but don't overreact to preseason is always a smart way to approach it. And everybody else is everybody else, there's only 2 other guys. The other 2 between Reggie and Adem, I think they're in need of something happening in front of them in a negative way to get an opportunity here.
And Bono is definitely a lot of Delaware Blue coats this season to work on his game and get acclimated with the NBA game, work on some of the issues with the fouling and the as best as you can with improving your hands. All of that stuff has to be worked on.
They need one of those the football guys have that they just put it on the belt and throw footballs at them.
Yeah.
I don't the jugs machine, right?
Yeah.
Get a jugs machine for Adem for wherever he's living, and that's just like in his living room every day, just catching
chuck a basketball in at random times. Don't even let him get ready.
He
React.
He might need a helmet for the first couple of days because he's going to miss a few of those.
And listen, I really like Adem as a long-term prospect, right? Like he's got a lot of things that you can't teach, right? Like the desire and the attitude about showing up every day, all that. Great athletic tools, but got some things to work on.
All right, we got to work on some super chats here that we have. We have a few. And first off, it is James Alexander III just simply wanting to donate, and we appreciate it. James, we saw you in the chat.
Thank you,
for
James.
the donation of the super chat. Much appreciated. We go next to Real Time, Prince Blue.
This is a question for Nick Nolte over there. Better big man, Joel Embiid or Nia Mordo?
I risked my entire career by buying one of them a car, so you know which way I'm going.
Good answer. Good answer.
Good
Real
job,
time.
Coach.
Keep that one going throughout the season because I know you will. Keeping that Nick Nolte
He
in
is
the mix.
hammering that. I think Derek's like one more Nick Nolte joke from blocking Real Time.
Oh, if I could block him from the account, he'd be gone.
So there is no over
Devon
under
and Real
5
Time.
games.
Devon and I are going to be hooting and hollering at every Nick Nolte joke.
And
so
Bree will just every now and then probably throw
I'll be
that
up here
photo
like
up
a
there.
seal at the zoo. Just like, yeah.
Devon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats, we appreciate this one as well. Is Kyle Lowry really Manny Fresh? I don't know if he can make beats. I don't know.
Manny Fresh, the legend, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know if he can make beats, but I would say no if he is really Manny Fresh.
Shout out to Manny Fresh. He's
got a new one with Juvie. I saw.
Does he?
A new one. Yeah, they did a new one. Yeah.
Speaking of Juvenile, I don't remember if we talked about this. Did you see the Tiny Desk concert
Yes,
he did?
I did.
That's one of the greatest pieces of live instrumentation I've seen in years.
I didn't know he had that in him.
That was crazy
Of course,
good.
with the band and what they did with the instruments, but I didn't know he had that in him this late in the game.
That was amazing. So I highly recommend look up Juvenile Tiny Desk. Enjoy the rest of your Friday after this show is over. You will, I promise you.
All right, our buddy Mr. Sandman, Bring Me a Dream asks, Embiid has been limited to the DHO and the half-court offense. What is his role now with Paul George and a rising Tyrese Maxey?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think you can run some DHO with both of those guys, especially with Tyrese. Like Tyrese is really good at that. So I don't think his role is really going to change all that much. Like you're going to run a lot of pick and rolls with Tyrese, get that pocket pass to set up that short roll. You're going to run some DHOs with both of them, and you're going to get in the paint and force double teams and kick it out. I think his role's pretty static, actually.
And look, there's going to be some pretty traditional pick and roll with Maxey. That was a look that they used a lot with James Harden because James Harden is the
King.
Pick and roll guy.
Yeah.
And Maxey and Joel last summer
spent a summer, and Max is like, I'm going to do this.
I'm going to learn the pocket pass. And he learned that pocket pass to Joel at the elbow, and they sort of mastered that. So I think for me, it's how do you iterate on that? And it's less about Joel than it is Tyrese's passing reads, right? Like, okay, they take Joel away. Your scoring lanes are covered. Who's open? Is it Paul in the weak side corner? Is it, Eric Gordon? Do you need to reset the offense? What do you need to do? Like that's the evolution for Tyrese. I think on Joel's end too, and I know we've mentioned it in the context of like the Andre Drummond Joel front court, which Derek is still cringing and rolling his eyes at.
As
and
you
whatnot.
said, we're the SEALs, man, because we want to see it.
That's true sicko mode when we say that. But Mr. Sandman, I
put
think
Bona at the 3 too. Let's get really weird.
okay. Now
I draw the line somewhere.
I'm just
Yabusele
somebody's
at
got to
the
be
3,
sane
man.
around here. I think I'm expecting Joel to take more threes all over the floor. And so how does that change what they're running? So for example, if Joel is in the corner and they're using him as a corner shooter at times, that opens up some stuff for Paul George, Tyrese Maxey ball screens at the top of the key where one, Joel is getting kind of a break on offense, just like, hey, just go stand in the corner and somebody's going to have to guard you. Two, shorter shot for Joel. And three, then you can iterate on everything you want to do with Tyrese and Paul. So I think we've already seen in the preseason, they've done some ghost screen stuff where Tyrese is just trying to see, will they switch it? Will they stick with me? And if they don't stick with him, that's a quick, pass over to the wing and an open three for Tyrese Maxey. So we're going to see a lot of just bread and butter plays iterated on throughout the year. I don't think there's going to be some big dramatic offensive change. I just think with the addition of Paul George, you'll see different types of the same look would be my guess.
To add on to the three-point shooting, we know if he's in that corner where they're operating at the top of the key, they have to be real careful of the defense because Joel is not that ordinary center who cannot make threes. He can make those threes. And then the other thing for me offensively, and we discussed this even last season, we talked about it briefly for Team USA when we were watching the practice before the showcase in Las Vegas, and even watching those games. He has a hard time for whatever reason, as Mr. Sandman says, he's been relegated to the DHL. That jump hook, that little soft jump hook, the baby hook, he's got to knock that down because if they're worried about keeping him from just constantly having to be physical with somebody on the low block to get those touches that he will be. He'll have some back to the basket ones where he's just going to simply dominate and overpower a defender. Sometimes he's also going to have to make it easy on himself like he does with that layup at the free throw line because that is his patented shot. He has to make those baby hooks and make those consistently because that's an easy shot attempt for him. So many guys do it in the league. He should be able to make that one with consistency with his touch. He should be able to knock that one down at a very, very good percentage. And that's one that he really has to, again, if he's trying to stay away from some of that physicality so much banging that goes on, he has to knock that one down. So I think that's part of the DHO thing, Mr. Salmon, that you bring up. That's not only thing that he's relegated to because we know what he can do with the face-up game. We also know what he can do with his back to the basket. That baby hook is going to be key. And we even watched it at training camp where he was getting frustrated with himself for missing that very shot in those drills with the coaches. That's going to be another piece for him to unlock. If you didn't think anything, Joel is the perfect offensive player, he can do everything. He needs to unlock that. That's one thing I would like to see him unlock a little bit more on that low block with that baby hook.
And by the way, one last thing on that subject. Some of it is just like they're going to have to help Joel with, hey, set a back screen. Try to rub his guy off so he can, it's little resistance. He just gets into position and then it's not, he's wading through two people and having to jostle for position. Like design some stuff so that his initial work is, not as taxing as it might be. And then you're in that, 6 to 8 foot range. It's just quick, go right up, push shot, floater, hook shot, whatever it might be. I think that's going to be really key for him as well.
And when you're not as good at something, you tend to rush it.
Yeah.
Be patient. Believe in the shot and knock it down. Similar to what we were talking about with KJ Martin from the 3-point line. This one right here.
You're talking about Joel or my ad reads?
Joel.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fairness, I really messed with you on the ad read today. So that was talking about breathing floors. Shout out to Empire.
Well, shout out to all of them. Empire.
Shout out. We already saw there was some endorsements of HelloFresh in the chat. Also, since we brought up the diehard program a bunch today, I saw in the middle of the show, regular listener Rick Morse joined our Discord.
What up, Rick?
So that means Rick has become a diehard probably semi-recently. Shout out to Rick. Unlike you other slackers, stepping up to the plate, joining the diehard program. So a lot of SpawnCon today, I feel like. But hey, that's what we do around here. We also gave you almost an hour and a half of hoops talk on a Friday afternoon.
And we're going to have a busy week next week. 2 basketball games as the regular season starts. And they count
this time.
Wednesday and Friday, pre and post game shows. And then on Monday and Tuesday, it's the lead in. So we have some big stuff prepared for you for Monday and Tuesday of next week. We appreciate our presenting sponsors for the show today, both Rothman Orthopedics and Bet365. We're going to have a fun season. We'll get into it all next week. But first, before we go, we got to say roll call time.
And first of all, I have to say, guys, the chat was just all over the place today. I'm seeing people talking about 5%er math and the Wu-Tang Clan and all kinds. Like, listen, I love the Wu-Tang Clan like they're members of my family, but I don't know how you guys got on the subject.
I don't know. I missed
Supreme mathematics, all this other. It's just like, what is going on here today? We're unhinged on a Friday going into the weekend.
Apparently, I'm a third member of Crisscross, and I don't even know what I did.
We got Nick Nolte, and I don't know the members of Crisscross, frankly. I don't remember their names. So
yeah, I forgot their names.
I wish I did. Bree, you want to help us out on that one? Do you know the members of Crisscross? You're younger than us. That's before your time, I think. Anyway.
Gene probably has it right away as soon as we say
Anyway,
yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for checking in today. Thank you, too. And by the way, I heard from someone yesterday, I won't say who it is, that I might have forgotten to say, my girl, Winona.
Hey, Nona.
So thank you, Winona, for hanging out. X-Man in the building who's laughing at the idea of me saying 5% math. I know a lot of things. I also know what I don't know. Let's put it that way. Shout out to Darkness, who's in the building as always.
Turn the lights down.
Shout
Daddy
out
Mac
to
and Mac Daddy. Rick Moore
Shout out to Rick Moore. Shout out to Terrion. Shout out to Eugene Ross.
What up, Gene?
Shout out to my guy Al, the 2-minute warning.
What up, Al?
Shout out to Martian Lynch 33, somehow leading us on a Wu-Tang Forever type of chat today.
Nothing
on a
to
Friday.
mess with. Nothing to mess with.
Thank you to our super chatters today who were, let's see, James Alexander III. Thank you, James. Thank you to Real Time with Prince Blue, the #1 Nick Nolte fan and all of PHLY. Thank you to Devon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats. And thank you to DJ, a.k.a. Mr. Sandman. I love that we have 2 AKAs. We got to get some more AKAs in here.
And 2
just
DJs. 2 DJ. You got DJ and Schoolboy
back,
Beats.
man.
So you guys need to collab and make some music.
We got Tim K. We got Bootzilla.
Boots.
We had, I think it's your guy, BC, right?
Yes, BC.
Hits
What
us
up,
with
BC?
the Go Lakers, LeBron the GOAT every single time. That's he's not a Sixers, he's a Lakers guy, and he's a LeBron guy. Always here, always showing love, and we love that. Love all of you. I want you all to have a safe, fun weekend. It's the last weekend without Sixers basketball until at least the middle of April.
And we get basketball on Tuesday.
Yeah.
What a crazy thing to think about. I see Brian Pumper checking in right at the end as well. Guys, also, Terrion asked, do you guys accept cryptocurrency as payment?
Take real money.
I don't think so, but that's a question for somebody that's not taking the money in here. Everyone, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. And if you hit the thumbs up button, that is a thank you to super producer Bree. As always.
Great job, Bree, as always.
Thank you, everyone. We will be back on Monday. See you then.
Let's go get some food.
Chris Kelly and Chris Smith.
We all silly like the mayor.